Good day everyone, especially to you ma'am. I'm Criscia Autentico and today I'm going to discuss to you the Chapter 7 of the Philippine Tourism Laws, which is the laws regulating transportation establishments. But before that, let me read to you this first. From the time the wheel was invented, man began to travel and explore different corners of the world. In modern times, with the invention of the first flying machine and the marine vessel, tourism started to grow at a fast pace. Transportation as a business carries with it not only high returns but great responsibility, for many lives are at stake in this risky sector of tourism. And now, let me introduce to you to our topic outline. First is law on common carriers. Second is responsibility of common carriers. Third, liabilities of common carriers from the acts of employees and strangers. Fourth is registration of aircraft. Fifth is seatbelt law. Sixth is law on transportation of animals. 7 is law on transportation of vehicles. 8 is public service laws. And lastly, we have the traffic laws. In the end of this chapter, our learning objectives are: identify the laws affecting the transportation sector. Second is identify the rights of passengers of commercial transportation. Lastly is explain the relevance of these laws to the promotion of tourism in the country. The Philippines has become one of the promising tourist destinations due to the extraordinary hospitality of the Filipinos and the diversity of tourist attractions in the country. However, one challenging aspect of promoting inbound tourism in the Philippines is the security and safety issue. On the other hand, some of the best transportation and travel professionals are Filipinos. For example, seafarers, pilots, drivers, flight attendants, cabin crew, aircraft mechanics, and others. On the other hand, some of the worst recorded transportation disasters and accidents are in the Philippines. The transportation sector is therefore greatly affected by this concern. This chapter will deal with the different laws on affecting the transportation sectors as they are integral. And now let's proceed to our first topic, which is the law on common carrier. The primary law that governs common carriers in the Civil Code of the Philippines as clearly implied from Article 1766, therefore, which states that in all matters not regulated by this code, the rights and obligations of common carriers shall be governed by the Code of Commoners or Commerce and special laws. In the Article 1732, common carriers are persons, corporations, firms, or associations engaged in the business of carrying transporting passengers or goods, or both, by land, water, or air for compensation, offering their services to the public. In the Article 1733, common carriers, from the nature of their business and for reasons of public policy, are bound to observe extraordinary diligence in the vigilance over the goods for the safety of the passengers transported by them, according to the circumstances of each case. In Article 1755, a common carrier is bound to carry the passenger's safety as far as human care and foresight can provide, using the utmost diligence of very cautious persons, with due regard of all the circumstances. In the Article 1756, in the case of death or injury of passengers, common carriers are presumed to have been at fault or to have acted negligently, unless they prove that they observed extraordinary diligence as prescribed in Article 1733 and 1755. In the Article 1757, the responsibility of a common carrier for the safety passengers as required in Articles 1733 and 1755 cannot be dispensed with or lessened by stipulation, by the posting of notices, by statements on the ticket, or otherwise. And for our next topic is the liabilities of common carriers for the acts of employees and strangers. In the Article 1759, common carriers are liable for the death of or injury of the passenger through the negligence or willful acts of the former employees. Although such employees may have acted beyond the scope of their authority or violence of the orders of the common carriers, this liability of the common carriers does not case upon proof that they exercise diligence of a good father of a family in the selection and supervision of their employee. For our next topic is the enforcement of liability common carriers. The liability of common carriers can be enforced in the following causes of action. First is in case of death or injury to passengers, the victim may file a case of breach of contracts of carriage or culpa contractual against the owner of the common carrier. Second is in case of the death or injury caused to the stranger or pedestrian, the victim may file a criminal complaint against the driver of the common carrier for reckless imprudence resulting in homicide and damage to property. The victim may also file a civil suit against the common carrier and its driver on the ground of culpa aquiliana or quasi delect. The damages are recoverable from common carriers in the action based on the culpa contractual or culpa aquiliana. The damages that are recoverable are as follows: actual damages, compensatory damages, moral damages, exemplary damages, debt indemnity, and attorney's fees. Nominal damages may be awarded in case moral or exemplary damages may not be awarded. And actual damages consist in expenses for medicine and hospitalization and others, or etc. B is unrealized profits are recoverable as determining the compensatory damages, which shall be fixed by net yearly income of the injured one or deceased passenger and multiplying the same by the number of the years that he was expected to live or lead a gainful existence as determined by morality tables of the life insuring or insurance companies of the Philippines. C. Moral damages may have been awarded with the mishap resulted in the death of a passenger, 15, or when the heirs of the deceased suffered mental anguish, or when the carrier was guilty of fraud or bad faith, even if that did not result. The big amount of damages will be awarded in view of the importance of the person of the passenger. D is exemplary damages or corrective damages are awarded by way of example on correction of the public good, or when the common carrier acted in wanton, reckless, and oppressive manner, while the immediate beneficiaries of the standard of extraordinary diligence are, of course, the passengers and owners of cargo carried by a common carrier. They are not the only persons that law seeks to benefit. Article 2231 of the Civil Code explicitly authorizes the imposition of expiatory or exemplary damages in cases of quasi-delicts and the defendant acted with gross negligence. E is awarded for debt indemnity is in accordance with current rulings of the court. F is award for attorney's fees may be recovered when exemplary damages are awarded. Under Article 2008 of Civil Code, attorney fees may be recovered when exemplary damages are awarded. In case of Metro Manila Transit Corporation versus Court of Appeals in 298 Criscia or 945 in 1998, it was held at the awarded of 50,000 as attorney fees reasonably. G. In case moral damages cannot be awarded without proof of carrier's bad faith, ill will, malice, or wanton conduct, nominal damages may be allowed under the circumstances. Nominal damages may be awarded as provided under Articles 221 and 2222 of the Civil Code of the Philippines for the purpose of indemnifying the victim for loss suffered by him. Nominal damages are recoverable if no actual, substantial, or specific damages were shown to have resulted from the breach. The amount of such damages is addressed to the sound direction of the court, taking into account the relevant circumstances. And now, in the nature of airline, bus, and shipping tickets. The best evidence of contract carriage in the passage ticket. Under our jurisprudence, an airline, bus, or shipping ticket is a contract of adhesion, considering that all provisions thereof are prepared and drafted only by the carriers. The only participation left to the other party is to affix his signature thereto. In such situations, the Supreme Court ruled with terms thereof must be interpreted against the party who drafted the same, in this case an carrier. Regulation of the transportation business. The Department of Transportation and Communications, or DOTC, is the primary policy, planning, programming, regulating, and administrative entity of the executive branch of government in the promotion, development, and regulation of defendable and coordinated networks of the transportation and common communications categories in the fast, safe, efficient, and reliable postal transportation and communications. Services Administrative Code of 1987, Book 4, Title 15, Section 2, and it has the power, authority, and technical expertise to determine specific transportation or communications project is necessary, viable, and vehicular or not a couple of Bureau Veritas versus Office of the President 205/0705 and 1992. And the regulation of the air transportation business. Legislative Act Number 3909 passed by the Philippine Legislature on November 20, 1931 created legislative under the Department of Commerce and Communications to handle aviation matters, particularly the enforcement of the rules and regulations governing commercial aviation as well as particular flying. It was amended but the licensing of airmen and aircraft, inspection of aircraft concerning air traffic rules, schedules and rates, and enforcement of aviation laws. On June 20, 1952, Republic Act Number 776, otherwise known as the Civil Aeronautic Act of the Philippines, was enacted, which defined the powers and duties of Civil Aeronautics Board personnel and the regulations of the civil aviation. On April 4, 1987, Executive Order Number 125 was enacted, created the Air Transportation Office. And now let's proceed to our next topic, which is the registration of aircraft. Only aircraft owned by or leased to a citizen or citizens of the Philippines and which are not registered under the laws of any foreign country may be eligible for registration. In legislation of the shipping industry, the Maritime Industry Authority, MARINA, was created on June 1, 1974 with the issuance of Presidential Decree Number 474 to integrate the development, promotion, and regulation of the maritime industry in the country. It was originally placed under the Office of the President. With the creation of the ministry, now the Department of Transportation and Communications by virtue Executive Order Number 546, the Marina was attached to the DOTC for policy and program coordination on July 23, 1979. By virtue of Republic Act Number 9 295, May 3, 2004. Marina has the following function. In the legislation of the land transportation, the concept of the land transportation system in the Philippines started when our ancestors invented means of locomotion. The early means of transportation used were animals, in moving people and goods from place to place. Although the means of land transportation during the early days were not as sophisticated as the modern vehicles of today, and the roads were not as well as constructed, the early Filipinos also observed some forms of laws to govern their mobility. These laws were as informal and simply as specifying which animal could be used for certain purposes. However, the existence of these rules show that our ancestors had already felt the need to regulate the transportation system. Today, in the Land Transportation Office, or the LTO, and the Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board, or the LTFRB, which are the agencies involved in the regulation of the land transportation industry. The LTO is the proper agency which controls the registration and operation of motor vehicles and the licensing of owners, dealers, conductors, drivers, and similar matters. Under the Clean Air Act of 1999, vehicles must pass the emission testing requirements to be administered by the Department of Transportation and Communications as part of prerequisite for registration. On the other hand, the functions of the LTFRB are follows. A is to prescribe and regulate routes of service, economically viable capacities and zones or areas of operations of public land transportation services provided by motorized vehicles in coordinates with the public land transportation development plans and programs approved by the Department of Transportation and Communication. B is that to issue an amendment to revise, suspend, or cancel certificates of public convenience or permits authorizing the operation of public land transportation services provided by the motorized vehicles and to prescribe the appropriate terms and conditions therefore. C is to determine, prescribe, and approve and periodically review and adjust reasonable fares, rates, and other related charges relative to the operation of the public transportation services provided by the motorized vehicle. D is to issue preliminary or permanent injunction, whether prohibitory or mandatory, in all cases which has jurisdiction and in which case the pertinent provisions of the rules of courts shall apply. E is to punish for contempt of the board, both direct and indirect. F is to issue subpoena and subpoena duces, satum, and summon witnesses to appear in any proceedings of the board. G is to conduct investigations and hearing for complaints for violations of the public services laws on land transportations and of the board rules and regulations. H is to review motu proprio the actions of the regional franchising and regulatory office herein created. To promulgate rules and regulations governing proceeding before the board and regional franchising and regulatory office. J is to fix, impose, and collect and periodically review and adjust reasonably fees and other related charges for services rendered. K is to promulgate, administer, implement, and enforce rules and regulations on land transportation. And for the standard requirements for tourist land transportation is to be registerable. Every tourist transport must be found roadworthy upon inspection by a team from the Department of Tourism. And for the standard requirements for the tourist water transportation vessels, there should be at least one restroom each with toilet and washing facilities for male and female located the passenger accommodation area. And for the standard requirements for tourist air transportation is adequate life-saving devices and adequate communication equipment should be provided in accordance with the requirements prescribed by the Air Transportation Office. And our next topic is the seatbelt law. The seatbelt law was enacted to secure and safeguard its citizenry, particularly the passengers and drivers of private and public motor vehicles, from the ruinous and extremely injurious effect of vehicular accident. In order to secure the safety of the passengers and drivers at all times, the mandatory enforcement of the use of the seatbelt devices by the drivers and front seat passengers of private and public motor vehicles shall be enforced. Our next topic is the land transportations for animals. By the virtue of Republic Act 8485, also known as for the Animal Welfare Act of 1998, it shall be the duty of any operator of any land, air, or water public utility transportation or transporting pets, wildlife, and all other animals to provide in all cases adequate, clean, and sanitary facilities for the safe convenience and delivery thereof to the consigned of the place of confinement. For next is the law on importation of vehicles. Republic Act 7227 allows the free flow of goods and capital within the Subic Bay Freeport in Subic, province of the Zambales, in order to attract investors to invest their capital in the business climate with at least government intervention. And for our next topic is the public service laws. Public service law includes every person who may own, operate, manage, or control in the Philippines for the hire or compensation with a general or limited clientele, whether permanent, occasional, or accidental, and done for general business purposes. Any common carriers, railroad or street railway, traction, railway, subtract motor vehicles, steamboat or steamship line, ferries, and watercraft and shipyard. And now for the traffic laws. The Republic Act number 4136, which is enacted on June 20, 1964, in the compensation of law relative to traffic rules and regulations. And now in the restriction of as to speed, any person driving motor vehicle on the highway shall drive the same at a careful and prudent speed. Subject to provisions of the preceding paragraph is the rate of the speed of any motor vehicle shall not be exceed to the following, and the maximum allowable speed. On open country roads with no blind comers, not closely bordered by habitations, passenger cars and motorcycles 8 km per hour, in the motor trucks and buses is 50 km per hour. Second is on true streets of boulevard cleared traffic with no blind corners when so designated. Fourth, in passenger cars and motorcycle is 40 km per hour. In motor trucks and buses is 30 km per hour. Third is on city and municipal streets with light traffic when not designated to streets. And passenger cars and motorcycles is 30 km per hour. And motor trucks and buses is 30 km per hour. Lastly, in the true crowded streets approaching intersections at blind corners, passing school zones, passing other vehicles which are stationary or to the similar dangerous circumstances, and passenger cars and motorcycle is 20 km per hour. Motor trucks and buses is 20 km per hour. In the restriction of overtaking and passing, the driver of the vehicle shall not drive to the left side of the center line of the highway in overtaking or passing other vehicle proceeding in the same direction unless such left side is clearly visible and is free of oncoming traffic for a sufficient distance ahead to permit such overtaking or passing to be made in safety. For parking prohibition, no driver shall park a vehicle or permitted to stand, whether attended or unattended, upon a highway in any of the following places: A. Within an intersection. B. On a crosswalk. C. Is within 6 meters of the intersection of curb lines. D. Is within 4 meters of the driver entrance to the fire station. E. Within 4 meters of fire hydrant. F. Is in front of private driveway. G. Is on the roadway side of any vehicle stopped or parked at the curve or edge of the highway. And lastly, H. Is at any place where official signs have been erected prohibiting parking. In the driving or parking in sidewalk, no person shall drive or park a motor vehicle upon or unintended for vehicular traffic or parking a long way in a sidewalk, path, or alley. And the driving and substance intake, no person shall drive a motor vehicle while under the influence of liquor and narcotic drug. In the obstruction of traffic, no person shall drive his motor vehicle in such a manner as to obstruct or impede in the passage of any vehicle, nor while discharging or taking on passenger or loading or unloading freight. Duty of driver during an accident. In the event that any accident shall occur as a result of operation of the motor vehicle upon a highway, a driver present shall show his driver's license, give his true name and address, and also the true name and address of the owner of the motor vehicle. In the accreditation of Kalasa drivers, a Filipino or resident Filipino citizen who is at least 18 years old of age, physically and mentally fit, and of good moral character may apply for accreditation as Kalasa driver. And that's all for my report, and I hope you learned something, and thank you for listening. Again, I'm Criscia Autentico, and thank you.